All right, let's get this started, everybody. I'm so excited that you are here. This is such a great turnout on a Friday afternoon. You must be students who are interested in building your careers, and some alumni who are really taking seriously their professional development. So consider yourselves the self-selected group of people that are taking their careers seriously. We have a great panel discussion for you. For those who don't know who I am, I'm Professor Adam Collis at the Sidney Poitier New American Film School, and I'm the founding director of ASU Film Spark, which is ASU's industry relations professional development arm of the Sidney Poitier New American Film School, and we serve all students and alumni across ASU. And we're really excited to talk about producing and working in unscripted television today. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to my new best friend and just an incredible alum, Roy Orecchio, to help guide us through this conversation with our esteemed guests.
Thanks, Adam. Super appreciate all the hard work that ASU Film Spark has put in, and the support of the Sidney Poitier New American Film School, and of course, Arizona State University in general. So today we have a really exciting panel with working producers who are in unscripted. And we call this, I'm calling this Producers Clubhouse, because this is a more unstructured format than we've seen earlier in the day-to-day, where we're just going to talk about the nuts and bolts of production and all the things that it takes to take an unscripted show from a simple idea all the way to a locked and finished and delivered series. So I want to go ahead and just jump right in. One of our panelists is running a little late, but she'll be here, so we'll just skip her. We'll introduce her when she comes in. But I'd like to start introducing with Jared Dole. So Jared, hi Jared, and welcome. Jared is an ASU alumnus, so awesome to see an alumnus on the panel. He's the development manager at Painless TV. He's developed shows that have appeared on HGTV, Travel, Nat Geo, Disney Plus, and more. I also want to say that everyone's full bios are available in the links that Film Spark sent out earlier. So I'm not going to read everyone's full bios, but I do encourage all the students who are on the Zoom today to take a deep dive into the bios, because we are working with some fascinating people today. So again, welcome, Jared.
Hello.
And then I want to move on, and I want to introduce Geoffrey Lynn. Geoffrey is the executive in charge of production at ITV America. Hi, Geoffrey.
Oh, hi. Sorry, I didn't hear myself.
Geoffrey's credits include the huge monster hit runaway shows like shows you all know and love, Queer Eye, Real Housewives of New Jersey, and Disney's Becoming. So happy for Geoffrey to be with us here today. And next, I want to say hello to Dave Mace. Dave is the Executive Vice President of Development at Brian Graden Media. His credits include Create Together with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, RuPaul's Drag Race, Finding Prince Charming, also Instant Influencer with James Charles. Dave, it's so good to see you.
Good to see you, Roy. Hi, everybody.
Next up is Andrew Wantuck. So Andrew is also an ASU alumnus. Andrew, nice to see another alumnus in the building. He's a showrunner, executive producer, and director. You might know him from Tosh.0, The Jim Jeffries Show, The Connor Moore Show, and Golf Road Trippin' with James Davis. It's really nice to have Andrew here, because Andrew represents the sports world, and we don't have any other panelists for the whole day who come out of sports. So I'm excited to talk to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Roy. Appreciate being here.
Great. So like I said, we have one panelist, she'll come later. So I think we all know, like, unscripted, it presents so much opportunity, right? And it also presents so many challenges. And I think one thing that feels really appropriate to sort of launch with is, as you all think about your development and production journey over, let's say, the last 18 months, can you talk to me a little bit about how dealing with and working around COVID has affected you on a day-to-day? And we can just jump right in. Geoffrey, I'd love to hear from you. I know you have lots to say about that.
I have lots to say. Well, it started a whole new industry in the form of testing managers and COVID compliance officers. And it's a whole new kind of department that we now have to contend with. I don't think most of us ever imagined we'd be dealing with disease in our day-to-day on set, although there are certain shows that have. But yeah, I mean, at this point, it has completely changed our industry. Everything is remote, just like all of you are right now. We've always discussed over the past several years the idea of, for example, moving all of post to remote setups so that we could employ editors on a single show who are all across the country. We thought that was impossible. It's now very possible, and we realized we could do it within a 48-hour period, which sounds insane. When the world shut down, we had so many projects in the pipeline. We knew we had to figure out creative solutions to keep going. And we did. I think, you know, the kind of darker side of it is we've just had to get a lot more patience. One thing I'm constantly saying to my teams is that we all have to now, I think, focus on mental health in a way that we just had not considered previously, because all of us as a nation and globally are kind of going through some very tough times. And so we have to really think about that in terms of our crew. How hard do we push ourselves? How hard do we push our cast? What is really feasible in these times? You know, how is it kind of going to affect this team in the long run? What is more important to us? So those are kind of the headline issues for me.
Great. Andrew, I'd love to hear about it from that sports point of view.
Sure. The biggest challenge we had, we picked up production in February for Golf Road Trippin' with James Davis, which is, he's a comedian, and we do kind of an Anthony Bourdain style. He goes to golf courses, theoretically all over the globe, but during COVID, we decided to make it drivable from Los Angeles. And he had just gone through a very serious surgery. So COVID was absolutely on the top of our mind, and making a very safe set was paramount to the success of this shoot. So I think, to answer the question very directly, it increased our budget. I mean, we like that new, what's the word we're looking for? Business that sprung up. We hired the best people we could find to make sure that everybody was tested in advance, that we had, you know, rapid tests available. It was just producing is challenging in general, but having this extra layer of making sure anybody that came in contact with our host was absolutely tested and safe and, you know, thought out well in advance was an extra level of complication and adds to costs.
For sure.
But I will say we did it successfully. Nobody, there wasn't any COVID on our set. We followed strict protocols and we got through it, and it worked. So it can be done. It just is you know, more work for the producers.
Yes, I agree. More work and more expensive, and oftentimes you're not getting breakage from the network to cover those expenses. So you have to get creative about how to pay for it.
Yes.
So Dave, Mace, I'd love to talk to you because your company, Brian Graden Media, makes Create Together, which I think by its nature was a distributed environment anyway, where you have creators working sort of on their own and they're sharing their creations with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who's then compiling it. So in a way, did you feel like you were already doing this before any of us had to be doing it?
No, because that kind of, that show was a result of, and to COVID itself. So we sold that show knowing it could be completely produced remotely. And that's the nature of what Hit Record does as a community, a creative community, is collaborates creatively from all over the world. So basically we sold that show after COVID had already hit. So that was kind of like a blessing to us, because it allowed us to keep overhead costs covered, which was, you know, extremely harrowing, I have to say, for a small independent production company who is not part of a conglomerate with a lot of cash on hand. We were really struggling when everything shut down. And in fact, the one show that we were midway through delivering post-production was Instant Influencer with James Charles, and we had to scramble to figure out how we were going to deliver the rest of the show to the network so that it could air when it was supposed to air. So we had to figure out how to get our editors, you know, the equipment to work from home and how to coordinate all of that. It was madness, and thankfully we figured it out. And I don't know that it, you know, I feel like that may never change. It may never go back to having to have everybody in an office at an edit bay. Like, I feel like, you know, it's kind of changed the face of how people do post-production now. But I have to say, like I said, it was, we had to lay people off. We had to furlough people. Thank God for the, you know, the PPP loans, because that allowed us to actually survive. Because I don't think we would have been here otherwise as a production company. I think we might have folded. So we were able to bring back everybody full time during that period. It was like 6 to 8 months, and really allowed us, all we did was focus on development. Like that was the only thing that we could do because we couldn't make anything. So we were able to keep our development pipeline filled up by nature of just having nothing other than development to do.
Right. I agree. It was a perfect time to develop projects. I mean, you and I developed a project together during COVID. So we took advantage of that, which I guess is nice, sort of to throw to Jared. Jared, you work in development at Painless. Jared, did you find that suddenly sort of like the focus of production had shifted to development during COVID times?
Yeah, I will say it's kind of funny. Our office got shut down because someone got COVID, and that was me. I was the one who shut down our office during production. But yeah, it was interesting. Our company was luckier than most because the 2 shows we were producing at the time, they were ghost hunting. So it's one person alone in a room with a couple cameras, which is much more producible than most shows. But in development, there was absolutely kind of a mental shift. Immediately, a lot of people tried to do something that's like, oh, let's do something that's referring to COVID. What's happening during COVID? How can we do things from home? And a couple of networks put out shows right away trying to get in on that, and absolutely no one wanted to see them. Everyone wanted to forget that COVID existed. And so it became a challenge of what can we develop and even produce during this time that people will never be able to tell as a COVID production, and we can pretend COVID doesn't exist for 30 minutes of your life. So yeah, development became a big question. A lot of things got halted, and the focus became, what can we do that's easily producible without getting 40 people? That created a lot of unique challenges.
Yes, I'm sure. Thank you. I agree. You brought up a really good point, Jared. Like, contrary to what I think, you know, was sort of a lot of people's first instinct, right, was like networks did not want to buy anything that was about COVID. They wanted fantasy, escapism. I want to forget COVID. So I'm really glad that you brought that point up, because I think that's super important. I also now want to introduce our final panelist who's arrived. Please say hi to Jennifer Stander. So Jennifer is a freelance co-executive producer. You may know her from Tabitha Salon Takeover, Dallas Cowboys Cheerleaders, RuPaul's Drag Race, Untucked, Married at First Sight, Addicted to Marriage. Jennifer's been working in Unscripted for quite a while. She began her career in 1999. She's worked for MTV, VH1, Lifetime, TLC, Bravo. It's a long list. And Jennifer was one of the founding sort of generation of the seminal genre-defining dating shows of Dismissed, Next, and Date My Mom. So I'm thrilled to have Jennifer join us on the panel today.
Hi, I'm happy to be here.
Hi. So Jen, I want to talk to you, shifting away from COVID, I want to talk to you about, because this is a panel for ASU students who are interested in careers in unscripted television, right? And I think you certainly have made a beautiful career for yourself in unscripted television. And I want to talk to you about the nuance of getting the best stories out of cast members who are not actors, right? I think there are a lot of students who are on this Zoom who come out of a scripted POV, out of working with actors. And we, all of us in the unscripted world, we don't work with actors. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how do you derive the best stories out of these people who are regular, everyday folks?
Well, that's the big question. That's the whole trick of it all. Well, first of all, yeah, you definitely don't want them to be actors because what we're doing is trying to bring the truth out of people and put them in experiences and see how they react or follow their experiences. But you want to see the truth because when they start faking it, the audience can tell, and that's what it reads as fake. So there's a couple different ways that I like to go about it. But the first is to really get to know your cast member in a intimate, like really knowing each other, talking to each other, what drives them, what do they care about, what were the big, moments in their life, why do they want to do this show, whatever it is, if it's a relationship show, what are they trying to get out of it? Because a lot of it comes as instinct once you really, really, really know your cast member. And I would say also a lot of cast members, when people start on a show, they feel like, oh, I don't want to be produced, and they're nervous about that. So it's sort of like involving them in the process, not making them feel like I'm producer and you're lab rat. It's more like, okay, we're going to do this together, right? We're going to, here's the journey we want to take. And I like to just like keep it very like friendly based, but obviously like, the producers and production are in charge, but where we can work together. So if something's really steering wrong, I can be honest about that and be like, this isn't the way you want this to be going, and be honest with them. And then hopefully you get the honesty from them.
That's great. And I agree with you. It is about keeping it as real as possible with them without pulling back the curtains so much that you're revealing production secrets to them. I think it's sort of interesting when we think about producing, right? Again, the students on this call are many of them are coming from a film POV, and that's not who we are. So I'd love if everyone can just sort of go around and really just break down as a producer, what do you do? And we can just jump in and start with Andrew.
Great. Yeah, so I like to think that I usually start answering that question with, I think great producing is if I do my job really well, almost nobody knows you're doing it at all. That you're kind of acting as this conduit in between all of these different departments and making the team come together to produce whatever you're trying to get out of that. So in a lot of ways, I look at it like great leadership. So you're trying to get all these different members of the team to perform at their best, whether that's talent, camera department, all the different departments that we're working with, and we're trying to get them to excel, to be on time, to be excited, to give their A game at any given moment. And so like a coach, you're trying to be as prepared as possible and adaptive to anything that can go wrong, to foresee what can go wrong and be ready for that. So that's one of the games I like to play usually every morning when I'm about to go to a set, is I'll talk to a trusted, a fellow producer or a line producer, and I'll ask the question, what can get us today? What can go wrong today? And we try to predict with our experience what's going to potentially go wrong, so then we can be in front of it already. And so I think producing is the glue, is the kind of behind the scenes force that makes it happen.
That's fantastic. Everything you just said, yes. Let's go to Dave. Dave Mace, what do you think?
I actually started my career in scripted. So to me, there's so many parallels that you can make between unscripted and scripted producing. So it's not that far of a leap to think about. I mean, if you think about scripted, it all starts with somebody who has an idea for a show or a script, or they write a script or a spec or whatnot. It's the same here. Somebody has an idea for a reality show or a non-scripted show. It could be me, it could be somebody on my team, could be a third-party producer or a showrunner like Roy who comes to me with an idea. So it's really like that's the first part of it. And then the second part is, once we find a buyer that wants that to make that show, it's really putting that team together. Like as a producer, I want to hire the best showrunner. I want to hire the best line producer to make sure we're not going to run over budget. I want to hire the best, production designer, art department. Like it's really, that's where I feel like it's so similar to scripted. It's you as a producer just finding the best of the best out there, putting them all together to make this show. And obviously casting is pretty important too. But again, that's why I would hire a great casting director depending on the genre of the non-scripted show. And then it's just sort of like, you know, seeing it through fully to production. A lot of times I go to set and I'm on set every day, just making sure we're getting what we need. And then, you know, looking at every cut that comes in once we're in post-production, giving notes, and until we fully deliver to the network. And then, you know, hoping that they have some marketing money to let people know about it.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely the getting the word out, right? We work in such a crowded media marketplace. It's so sad to kill yourself for a year or more, if you include development, on a show that's just, you know, no one knows about. And you're just like, you just want to scream from the rooftops like, hey, I have this great show, you guys should watch it. But I know you have 50 other shows you watch, but maybe 51 would be great. Geoffrey, Lynn, you approach things a little bit differently because you're an EIC, which is a key role, and you have a ton of responsibility. Geoffrey, can you talk about your sort of like your day-to-day? What is it like for you to do your job?
Yeah, I mean, day to day, I am just putting out fires, but during the course of a project, you know, I'm usually brought on pretty early on to help establish the budget, to help establish the schedule. You know, in development, these really wonderful, but sometimes just large and undoable ideas are put forward. So I have to kind of rein everything in and make sure that we can do this in an affordable way, that we can do it on a schedule that makes sense, that both we and the network can agree to. And so I'm kind of putting parameters in place. And then I'm working with other people to bring on showrunners, to bring on producers, to bring on field production managers, the crew that's going to actually make the show. And I basically try to show them the blueprint that we've devised and say, you know, look, this is how we kind of envisioned this being made. However, we trust all of you. We brought you on because we want your input into this. We want you to be able to make it your own. But, you know, I then have to kind of keep coming in being like, oh, well, we're going to go over there. Like, no, that's a little boundary there that we have to be mindful of. And then these teams come in and make the show. And at that point, I'm usually only brought in when things get a little bit too crazy or when there are problems. And then a lot of my job is solving problems behind the scenes that audiences will never see. And therefore allowing the production teams to keep moving forward and keep doing the best work that they possibly can. And then at the end, when all of these production teams leave and it goes into post, I'm still here doing the same thing with the post department. And even after that team leaves, I'm still here making sure the network feels that they have received everything that we promised we would give them contractually, creatively, and otherwise.
Yes, exactly, right? It's those deliverables that'll get you, because those are the last little bits that, you know, you need to deliver in order to trigger that final benchmark payment. Jared, how about you? Can you talk us about what's your day-to-day like as someone who works in development heavily? Are you developing ideas? Are you taking pitches? Are you doing a combination of both? How does it look for you at Painless?
Yeah, so I'm a little different, obviously. We like to joke that, or I like to joke that it's my job to come up with ideas for a show and somebody else has to make them. So it's fun for someone like me who's hardcore ADHD that I'm working on 12 to 15 ideas for 8 to 10 networks at any one time. So on a single day, I can jump between 4 different projects and I don't get, you know, hung up on this one thing. We do a combination of coming up with brand new concepts, taking pitches from outside producers and developing it with them, even finding talent and celebrities that we can work with. A lot of it is feeling out what networks want and what's working. So we'll get random mandates. You know, we talked to Discovery Channel and they said, Netflix just had Nailed It, and Nailed It was a huge hit. How do we do Nailed It for Discovery? I don't know what the heck that's supposed to be, but that's what they want because they know it's going to work. So it's taken some creative ideas trying to figure out how to fit the right talent into it. One thing Andrew said though was predicting what could go wrong. As a developer, you have to be doing that months before the show ever happens, because if we end up coming up with a great idea and we sell it to a network and we can't deliver because we didn't think about the production problems that come down the line, you can totally ruin your credibility with a network that you could have gotten 15 seasons of shows out of over the next 15 years. So there are a lot of conversations as we're developing these ideas and saying, how is this feasible? How are we going to shoot something like this in a 12-week production schedule? How the heck are we going to cast this or have enough episodes to do 6 seasons of this? You know, a bunch of the shows that have a big hook and twist at the end, like the Joe Millionaire show. Once you've done that show once and everyone knows the hook, how do you do a second season? How do you cast for that? Because now everybody knows what's coming. So there's a lot of, you want a new exciting idea that these network execs who've heard 80 ideas today haven't heard yet. But you also have to be realistic about what can we deliver if we actually sell the show. And so you have to be able to put your feet in a lot of different places and think from a lot of different angles in order to do it. But like I said, I'm an ADHD guy, so it's fun for me that I can jump from a housing renovation show to ghost hunting, and then you know, back to caterers, and then some Real Housewives ideas in the back, all in the same day, which is really fun.
Yes, that's great. Yep, it's good to be diverse. That is for sure. When all of you on the panel, when you think about baseline skills, right? When people come into the industry with little experience, what are the baseline skills that you would like to see them bring to the table? And I'll let, you know, whoever feels like they're ready to answer that question, you can just jump on in.
I can go right away because I think about this all the time. I actually got my acting degree at University of Southern California, so I should be completely unqualified for this job. But what I realized very early on is that I need people to understand the idea of the show must go on, and understand that you have to figure out a way to make this work. And that happens every single day on set or in post with every single position. And I think you can also get that from having experience as a waiter. I even had a production assistant one time who had no experience come in, but she had like been cleaning barns most of her life. Like, she took care of horses, and she pitched herself in a way that blew our minds, because she essentially was talking about how, like, no matter what, she has to get up every day. She has to do all these things. And we were like, that's what a PA does. She can learn all the lingo on the job. She can figure out the walkie stuff, because all of us did. None of us necessarily took courses in that. You learn on the job. There are always people to teach you. But I think if you have that drive, not like some sort of aggressive drive, but a communal group drive that, like, we're going to get through this, the show must go on. I think that's all you need. Oh, and of course, a willingness to learn.
I'll piggyback on that, because I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. Like, one of my favorite stories when I was at Comedy Central, I was in a hiring position, and we had a couple of PAs, and we had an AP job, an associate producer job open, and we wanted to hire internally and bring somebody up. And so we were looking at the different PAs that we had at the office. And one of the jobs that I think many of us here on the panel probably did at some point was a PA. And so you do get coffee as a PA. And it's not an easy job. To be perfectly honest, when you're getting coffee for 50 people or something like that, and people in this industry can be very picky, there's lots of attention to detail that goes on with something as simple as a coffee order. And there was one person who had a fantastic attitude, always was very detailed about getting the coffee order. And there was another person that had just graduated from film school and might be a very talented director, but was not very good or happy in the current position that they were in. But when I was faced with making the choice of who to promote, I looked and gravitated toward the person that did the absolute best they could with the job they were doing at that moment, and looked at that attention to detail. And I thought, if that person can do that, that's the person I want in battle with me when I'm solving whatever problem that comes our way in production, because that person was already in front of it, already had the details. When I was looking around with some fire that I had to put out, I turned around and that AP was right there with the bucket of water. And so I think in leadership, you're looking for those kind of qualities in those positions, because you want to hire who's close to you. You want to bring up people that you're already working with. So the best advice I can give to somebody that's wanting to break in is excel at whatever job you're doing at the moment. If you can make somebody's life easier and anticipate their problems, you will rise fast in this industry, because so many people are always looking at what they're not getting rather than what's right there in front of them. And so to me, that's the best advice I can give you, is excel. Take a lot of pride in your work that you have right in front of you. No matter what you think how small it is, people around you are noticing, because a lot of us have been there in that same position.
I just add to what Geoffrey and Andrew just said, but this is going to seem super obvious, but everybody that we hire or I hire has to have a passion for non-scripted television or television in general or the entertainment industry. And you would be surprised, and I've just gone through the interview process and we just hired a new manager of development. When I asked the question in an interview, I'm like, well, so tell me about what are you watching on TV? What are the reality shows that you love that you can't get enough of? And I've had some candidates tell me that they don't watch non-scripted, they only watch scripted, or they only watch feature films or read books. And to me, it's like, you need to understand that you're interviewing for an unscripted job, and you need to know everything there is to know about what's currently out there in the marketplace. At least I would expect you to, in order to have a conversation with me about it. So again, I think, it's absorbing everything that you can learn about the industry, and you come in the door with that under your belt, at least, at minimum. And then as an assistant, back in the day when I started, I had a boss that was like, you can never tell me the answer is no. You have to figure out, don't tell me no, or I don't know. Those two are just not the right answer.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Or you do know.
I thought so, yeah.
I can hop in kind of a similar vein. I agree. You don't want to come and say, we can't do this. You want to say, this isn't going to work, but I have a solution for you. And that also really applies to development. I've noticed from the places I've worked, some of the best developers are people who've done stand-up comedy. And the reason is because in stand-up comedy, they teach you don't say no, you say yes and you add on to the idea. So you can have a horrible idea that's we're going to do singing competition. It's well, that's been done a million times. They're okay, but you won't be able to see the person who's singing. You'll just hear the voice. You're well, that's the show, The Voice. Okay, now we're going to have celebrities and they're in costume. Suddenly you have the Masked Singer and it's a completely different show because you didn't just say no. And it's really easy to say no to an idea and to shoot down an idea. So at least for development, a lot of the best people are going to be the ones who come in and say, this might not work, but what if we did something else? Let's add to it. Let's build it. And a lot of that just comes down to storytelling and writing. And, at the end of the day, it's unscripted, but it's all storytelling. So we need people who can tell good stories and watch as much unscripted TV as you can.
Yes, 100% to that. Consume all of the unscripted television you can possibly stand. Even the shows that you don't think that you'll like, you will always learn something from the way a produced show is made. So I'd like to talk to Jen for a second. So Jennifer, you have a long history in working in television, and I think you've seen a lot of the changes that have occurred as the industry has matured and grown. From its infancy up until now. I think you and I, we always like to say there were no rules, we wrote the rules. So tell me about, I guess from your POV, what's changed?
Well, everything's changed really, because it was just sort of it was just a silly little job that people in their 20s who were pursuing acting careers or comedy careers or writing fell into on the side so that we could have, and it wasn't a year-long commitment. It would be a couple months at a time, and it was good money. And then you could go off and do whatever. And everybody was well, what are you going to do when this ends? This is and you're whatever, I'll write it while I can. there weren't many rules. Well, Roy and I I started at MTV really in the early aughts, so there were really not any rules. We were all sort of in our 20s and running the show, and but it was still a serious thing, and we got it done. It wasn't all play. Everybody understood hard work. So since then, you know, we have. Oops, am I still here?
Yeah.
Okay, we have agents now. Sorry, I just can't see you. So since then, we have agents now. There's lots and lots and lots of rules. You have to do everything by the book. Back in the day, it was like, you know, just make it happen. Like there weren't, you know, permits weren't as big of a deal. And I mean, even like restaurants, it was a new thing, or restaurants or any other location, say for a dating show. It's like, you're basically pitching these locations like, and I would say in the pitch, like you get a free national commercial. None of that stuff works anymore. So it's a lot more like a real business. That's the majority of what's changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty accurate. So essentially everything.
Yeah, really everything. I mean, every little part of it. Except, you know, working with the talent, you use the same, you know, and making it happen. Everything that everybody said before, it's like, you can't ever say no. That's the first thing that was taught to me. It's like, you can absolutely never say no. Like you have to figure out how to make anything happen. So the other thing that happened is like you guys have rules now, like APs have, you know, are on a 12-hour day. Like we came from working, you know, 72, I mean, literally 72 hours straight awake at MTV networks in New York. So that's one thing, is that like, well, so that's all a lot more organized now, where you don't have to, where you're not working as many hours, things aren't as impossible, but you still have to make it all work, make it happen, find a solution as the day goes on.
Right, exactly.
Or you know, the night before, your talent might drop out. It's always just being on sort of 24/7 to figure it out and make sure it happens on the shoot day.
100%. You're right. Okay, I think we're going to enter the phase of the panel where we start to take student questions, because they're rolling in, so we might as well get to them. I think this first question is probably for our two ASU alumni, since you've both lived in Arizona, and the question is about that. So let's see. Hal Dane, are you on? Hal Dane? Well, I'll ask.
Yes, I'm on.
Oh, great. Go ahead with your question.
And let me just interject really quick, Haldane. If you could turn on your camera, if you can't turn it on, it's totally okay. We want to ask the students to turn on.
I can turn it on.
You.
You see my little stuff in the background, my Marvel. I'm a Marvel lover. I was gonna ask about the unscripted series in Arizona. Like, is it a good idea to like stay in Arizona, or should we look to go somewhere else to start our careers versus staying in Arizona? Like, is the industry based like widely somewhere else, or does Arizona have a chance? That's basically my question.
I'll say that that's another thing that's changed, is that you needed to be like in LA or New York before. And I'm finding like a lot of people on set are working, you know, they live wherever, and then they're traveling a lot for work. Obviously, then you won't be considered for the shows that are in LA and New York. But I mean, I would say it depends. Like if there's a popular show shooting in Arizona and you can get on that set, that's a great way to get in first. But it's probably easier to meet people in Atlanta, Charlotte, one of these cities that have a little more production going on. That would be my suggestion, but there's different opinions, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll also add. So one of the shows I work on currently it's called The Connor Moore Show, and it's on this streaming service called Golf Pass, which is NBC Sports owns it. It'll probably be swallowed up by Peacock pretty soon here. But our host lives in Dublin. Our post is run out of Orlando, and we shoot all the sketches in Los Angeles. So we're really this global entity, and I don't know if other shows are starting to see this, where it is expanding. So that isn't to say there's not great opportunities in Arizona. My own personal experience is once I graduated from ASU, I moved out to Los Angeles and just thought that that would be the best place to immerse myself in around like-minded people, other creatives. I thought I would meet more producers there. So I think I'll answer your question with, I think there's definitely a path for both, but I still probably would think New York and Los Angeles are still two major hubs to get a career in production going.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you for those answers. I agree with both of you. Thanks to a distributed working environment, I'm hiring people who work all over, especially editors. Some of my favorite and best editors do not live in Los Angeles. They work remotely. They have a very fast home internet connection, and they love their lives because they get paid as though they are living in Los Angeles, but they're living in much cheaper places with a lower cost of living. So it's for them, it's a win-win. Let's go to the next question. Let's see. Quan Hui, are you here?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, hi. My question is, do you think it's hard for international students for looking for a job?
Right. So you're curious to know, is it harder or easier for an international student to get to land a role?
Yeah.
I'll throw it out to the panel.
We've taken.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say we've taken a lot of international students as interns and have worked great and tried to find production jobs for them. I think sometimes they can bring a really unique perspective depending on the idea that may not be the same if it's 5 people who all grew up in California. So I personally have not seen it making any difference as long as the ideas and the talent and the work ethics there.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think at this point, we're looking for diversity, and I don't just mean racial diversity or gender diversity. We're looking for people with diverse life experiences because, they bring something to the project that we really could not have imagined. And we're looking for that on every single level. We want, a company that is made up of a community of people who can bring so many different stories to the table, their own stories, their own expertise, so that when we're editing things, when we're going through post, when we're in the field shooting things, we have all these different minds and ideas coming together to help make something that's just, I don't know, more imaginative. So yeah, I don't think so. I actually think that might help you. Like, you can put yourself forward because you might stand out from other candidates.
Yeah, but actually, for international students, we don't have the work permission.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit hard to find to find a job. In America, we need to have the work permission, but international don't have it.
Yeah, I think I work for a much larger company. Yeah. And I think most of the larger companies, they don't have issues sponsoring people or figuring out a workaround. I think a lot of projects these days that I work on, we have at least 1 or 2 staff members who come from a foreign country who are on the project full time. So I definitely don't think it's impossible. I get that part, like the legal logistical side of it might be a little bit more difficult because smaller companies might not have the resources to make that happen, but it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My response.
Great. Let's move on. We have more questions lining up. Alonda, are you here?
Hi.
Go ahead.
Hi. This question, I asked the question of course before because it kind of had to do with race as well, but I wanted to ask it because you always hear talk about certain cast members saying like, oh, they make my race look bad, or oh, they make my sexual orientation look bad, or or with editing, it's like, oh, they made me too aggressive or too weak and things like that. And I just wonder how you guys deal with the controversies relating to that.
That's a really good question. I think it goes back to sort of cast relations. Jen, do you want to talk about that when cast members feel like production is working against them or there's a friction?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I feel like you're asking like when they comment after they've seen it. And to Roy's point, I think that if you have a good relationship, that would be caught on set. I did a show last year where there were 5 couples. There were 5 producers working with each one, but one of the women was having a problem with her producer. And it was just sort of like, it wasn't being addressed and it was playing out. And then like once, you know, I went, we all spoke together and sort of aired it all out, like it stopped happening. She sort of had ideas of what this producer was doing and that wasn't the case. And so, I mean, you know, I mean, there's different types of shows. I feel like I haven't worked, at least in the last 15 years, on a show that's specifically trying to make people look bad. But I also feel that like, no matter what show it is, because of our society, people are going to say something bad about every single person, every single scene, every single show. And that just kind of comes with the territory when you put yourself in a public space, and especially right now with social media. So you just, you know, you talk about it, like I said, on set with the cast member, like what their concerns are and what you can do to help assuage them and make sure that that doesn't happen.
Right.
That's a really good question. It's a tough one to answer.
It's a really good question, and it comes up a lot, and it's something that those of us who deal with sort of relationship shows, that's a thing that we tackle constantly. I want to move forward because we have a lot of questions and a little bit of time. Taylor, are you here?
Yeah, I am.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I asked about, I know I'm speaking to mostly unscripted TV producers, but in terms of the incoming IATSE strike, I'm aware that that kind of hits a lot of scripted TV studios a lot more just based on what they use for film crews and stage sets. But how will that impact sort of the way studios look at working conditions, even if they're not unionized? Will you see it impact any of you, specifically in your workplace or in your field or where you work? And if so, where do you expect to see the largest changes to how your studio operates or how they look at sort of their employees?
I'm thrilled for it. I support it wholeheartedly. I think, you know, there are a lot of things we've been doing just because they've been done for, you know, the past 50 years. Like I remember when I did start in this industry, I was like 12-hour work days. What are we talking about? And of course, those end up being 16-hour work days. Now I'm so used to it that when somebody comments on it, I'm like, oh, right, I forgot. This is insane. So I look forward to it. What is going to be difficult is that the networks are going to have to pay for it. Like my company can't pay for it. I imagine that everybody else on here would feel the same way. So we are really going to have to push the networks. I really think that the union shows, what they end up doing has a trickle-down effect to the non-union shows. And I also think that for a company like ITV, where I work for, we are also going to have to be at the forefront of this and push the networks and say, no, we want to be on the side of IATSE. We want to join in with the workers. We want to support them. We also think this is nuts, but it does mean that a show that shot in 8 weeks might have to shoot in 10 weeks or 11 weeks because we want shorter work days. I think it's great. I'm all for it.
I think it's oftentimes it can work out as a boon to the unscripted world when the scripted world goes on strike of some sort. So you might find that now all the networks are like, give me as much unscripted programming and pitches as you possibly can because we're shut down on the scripted front. So I've seen in the past where a Writers Guild strike has actually benefited the non-scripted world because that's all they can actually produce until the writers figure out their deal. So I could see it going sort of both ways, but I'm with you, Geoffrey, that I think this is a good thing. I think the timing for a strike could not be worse coming out of a pandemic and a shutdown for most people. Like financially, it's going to be devastating if it actually goes through. I think I'm hoping and praying that they're able to figure out a deal.
If I could just add really quickly, I want to really focus on the student questions, but what you just said, Dave, is really there's some interesting backstory students to this, and that it was always my understanding that many felt that the unscripted industry was created because of a writer's strike originally in, I think, mid to late 90s. And it created an innovation and created enormous amounts of opportunities in the world of unscripted. Is that a fair description of the history of it, Roy?
I would say it's certainly part of it. I mean, I think Unscripted, it also has its roots in documentary filmmaking, and it did not just spontaneously spring up because of the WGA strike, but I will say that the WGA strike partnered with the original IATSE strike in the early 2000s. It certainly stepped on the gas pedal of unscripted production. And this new IATSE strike may have the same exact effect. So I'd like to keep going because we have more questions. Let's talk to Vincent. Vincent, are you here?
I am here.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thanks everybody for doing this, by the way. Been appreciating this whole afternoon. And of course I had to follow Taylor's awesome question. That was like, I don't know if I could do that. Mine's more basic. And Jen, I'm sorry, I'm adding a little bit to what I initially put in there. I just want to preface it by saying, what makes a good idea for a show, for an unscripted show in your minds that like is a new idea? Like if you hear something and you, oh, that could get made, and like what's the best process and the most realistic process to get that idea heard, considered by someone that makes those type of decisions?
I'll throw that out to the panel. Especially it sounds like it's sort of a development centric question. So those of you who work in development, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I can jump in. One thing we always say is that we want something that's the same but different. So someone doesn't go on to a network and want to try radically different kinds of programming. They want to sit there in their comfort space and watch something that's new, but it's also predictable and it's going to give them the same feeling they've had 100 times from that network. So there's kind of a line there you have to walk where, what can we make that's buzzy and it's going to get attention and it's going to make news, but is also not going to feel like a totally different experience from what people are already watching. And that can be a big challenge. One way that I have seen people get ideas to the networks is usually through production companies or producers like us. So we had a former ASU student who reached out to me a little while back and said he had an idea and was like, can I come pitch you the idea? I said, sure. If we like it, we'll champion it and we'll take it to the network for you. As somebody who's straight out of school, he's probably not going to be the showrunner on the show, but if it really was his idea and we champion it and it gets traction, we'll find a job for him. And he'll get to be able to tell people that that was his pitch, that he came, as someone straight out of school. So I would not worry about trying to get into a network. I would try to find a producer or a production company who can champion it for you.
Yeah, I second what Jared just said. Best way to get it is somehow get it in front of a production company. The other thing that you could probably take advantage of for somebody that's just getting into the business is Real Screen Summit, which is basically I think they have it twice a year now. And a lot of times they have pitch panels where you can actually bring in ideas of your own and pitch to somebody like me at a production company, or even sometimes they have network executives that you could pitch directly. So I would certainly take advantage of that as well.
Could I ask one quick follow-up? Is it better to have like a 3-episode YouTube series that you made to show, or a pilot to show that kind of shows what your vision is, or is it better to let it be created in the mind of that person you're pitching it to?
I always think if you have something to show, you should show it. And if you have the resources to put something together that's gonna, we all think in terms of video, like that's just naturally how we think. So I prefer it over a nice deck. So again, if you can put together a sizzle reel or an episode and show me what even if it's not fully produced, I always think that's a great way to go. Because we can, as producers, we can envision what it might look like on air. But, again, that's just me, but I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I was going to jump in too. If you know, like the kind of network you want your show to go to, like if I want to do a ghost hunting show, that's my idea. Go find all the other shows and look at what production companies do those shows. Reach out to those people, because a lot of times networks like certain production companies because they know how to tell stories for their network. So those are the people who can champion your idea for it. So target it a little bit.
I think those are great answers. Yeah, Andrew, do you have anything you want to add?
The only thing I'd add to that would be I've had a lot of luck with getting talent attached as early in the process as you can. In my own personal experience, working with Daniel Tosh, Jim Jeffries, James Davis, Connor Moore. So I've been around these comedians that are immensely talented. So that just helps in the pitch. It helps knowing that they're very confident. They've spoken to large groups of people on stage before. So they just have that energetic personality that can really drive things quickly through that development process.
Yeah, I will second that. Back in sort of previously, you could bring an idea to a network and they would pair your project with a celebrity, right? You did not have to have attachment. You could come in with just a great idea and a great deck and like a sick sizzle, and you could sell. But now networks are fully expecting you to bring the project to the table with the celebrity attached. It's your job as a producer to attach the celebrities. So that's sort of like the new thing, although it's not that new anymore. So it's very interesting. And I think as an independent producer who's really independent, i.e. not working with a production company, that's a very big ask. But to partner with a production company like Dave's company or like Geoffrey's company, that gives you the access to a pool of celebrities that you wouldn't normally have access to, which gives your show a better chance of getting sold. Let's take a look at the next question. Shalina. Shalina, are you here?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hi, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you once again for everybody on the panel for taking time out of your days to be with us. My question is, what is the project or projects that's been the most impactful to you, regardless of if they were successful or not?
I can say like a great experience for my career was RuPaul's Drag Race, because I started that in the early seasons, I guess season 2 or 3. And so it was fun to see that it was more of it was on Logo then, and just sort of see that that's a mainstream show, and to watch the trajectory of it becoming a mainstream show and an Emmy winner. And right now that was definitely something special. And to feel like I don't know if you guys are familiar, that there's Untucked is the sister show, and we would go back and bring families together, and it just felt like it was sort of a little deeper than a lot of the shows, because these people had really interesting stories. And yeah, RuPaul's Drag Race.
Great. Let's move on. Another panelist, jump in, please.
Personally, for me, I think the most rewarding thing I ever got to do was on the Jim Jeffrey show. We were a scripted show. We were nominated for a WGA award. We're kind of like John Oliver Tonight, but we also had field pieces in there, and that was specifically my job as a supervising producer. I was in charge of one particular segment, and we went all over the globe, and we were telling really amazing stories about rhino poaching to shark finning, to facial recognition software, ride-alongs with how different countries handle policing. And so it felt, even though it was a comedy show, it felt like we were making these really impactful 6-minute pieces. And it was just an incredible thing to work on. They're still out there on YouTube. So if you ever see a Jim Geoffrey show field piece, know that an ASU alum was involved working with those, because I'm really, really proud of that work.
That's great. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll go next. I think, you know, aside from being part of the original team that launched Logo Network, which I'm super proud of, which again was part of RuPaul's Drag Race legacy. There was one show that we worked on in particular that I'm super proud of, but it only went for 1 season, and it was called Trans-American Love Story. And it was basically way ahead of its time, in my opinion. But we had, we were like, let's do The Bachelorette with a trans woman as the Bachelorette. And nobody thought it could be done. And we found our Bachelorette, her name is Calpurnia Adams. And we basically cast all basically cis straight men as the ones that were pursuing her, as it should be, like, and I think we shot 10 episodes. There was also a transgender man that was part of the ones pursuing Calpurnia, but I thought, you know, it was super ahead of its time, and I would love to see that show get resurrected.
Yeah, I feel like the time is right, Dave. Like you're right. It was too soon, but now I feel like it would be a complete hit.
I want to work on that.
Yeah, I want to work on it.
I want to see that too. I'm like, Dave, bring that on.
Right, Dave, come on. We're all gonna do it.
Here we go, guys. This is it.
World of Wonder.
Oh my God.
Okay, that's what I figured. I was there when you guys were doing that. That was really good. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's great. Jared, did you answer?
I did. Mine's kind of lame. There was a one-off shark special that was on Nat Geo's Shark Fest, and it was just a clip show, but the reason it was special to me is because it's the first one that I can say was my idea that made it to TV. So that's it wasn't the greatest show ever made, but it was very personal to me that happened.
Well, that's a perfect reason to feel like it's the most impactful show for you. It's great to see your own creative make it to air and survive the many, many rounds of changes and notes and everything that can derail a show. That's cool. Super cool. Well, I can't believe it, but the hour is over. In fact, we've gone a little bit over, but this has been fascinating. I knew the Producers Clubhouse would be very satisfying. Although we all don't hang out in a real Producers Clubhouse, I'm happy that we could find a virtual space for us to gather and share our knowledge with current ASU students. I want to thank the ASU Film Spark team for their support. I also want to thank the Sidney Poitier New American Film School. I want to remind all the students who are watching, if you had an interest in anything you heard today from any of the panelists, they're all available as mentors in the Gusto program that's generating unscripted success through outreach. I encourage you to apply. Applications are now open. Please secure your spot. The link to apply came in the email that you all received, so please check it out. I want to take a second to thank all of our amazing panelists today. Thank you guys for sharing your knowledge and your experience and your passion for unscripted television.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you so much.